everybody, Matt Barton here with this week's Broker Minute or Two. Hopefully your springtime is getting off to a good start. I get questions periodically. Seems like I've had a few more of these recently, and they center around assumable loans, right? We went through a decade or more of really cheap money, from 2.5 to 3.5 was not uncommon for close to a decade. And so there's a lot of mortgages out there with very low rates. And so the logical question from sellers is, hey, is that something of value to me to help me get my home sold? And buyers are like, man, wouldn't it be great instead of 6.5%, 7% money, I could get 2.5%, 3.5% money? These are all logical questions, and we should be prepared to answer them. So in light of that, I want to prepare you on a couple things so you can bring some intelligence and calculus to those discussions. All right, so conventional loans, general rule, not assumable. If there's exceptions, please don't beat me up. I've got just a minute or two to cover these things. So FHA loans are assumable, VA loans are assumable, but they're different, right? And what I mean by that is, in the world of FHA loans, the loan or the case number is tied to the property, right? So 123 Main Street. If somebody wants to come in and assume that and they can qualify for FHA guidelines and lending requirements, then they become the borrower in that case. They assume the loan, and the original borrower can go get another FHA loan at 5678 Main Street. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. But when it gets to VA, and this is one we've had an issue with recently, is if you're talking one veteran to another, here's the important thing you need to know. The loan is tied to the veteran. Not necessarily so much the property. It's tied to the veteran. So if you have a veteran who is selling, right, he basically has a one-person ticket, he or she has a one-person ticket for a VA loan. It's like getting on a ride. I can take one seat, right? And if they are going to let another veteran assume their loan, well, that veteran comes in with his or her ticket and can replace the person on the ride of getting a loan, and they're free to take their ticket and go do a ride somewhere else. That's pretty straightforward, right? So veteran to veteran, they each have a ticket. They each have the ability to have a VA loan. But in the case where the seller is a veteran and the buyer or the assumer is not a veteran, here's the gotcha. And again, as a general rule, the Veterans Administration will say, well, that's great, Mr. Veteran, if you allow and they qualify and they go through the process, the loan to be assumed somebody who's not a veteran, you have to give them your ticket. And that means you can no longer ride the ride. You cannot go and get another VA loan. And it actually gets a little worse than that. VA will basically say, be aware of this, Mr. Seller, veteran seller, if the assumer does not perform on the loan, and let's say they eventually default and they were short of paying off the loan $50,000, the only way the original veteran can get back and get a ticket again is to go and make the default right for whoever assumed the loan and pay back VA the $50,000 that's sufficient. Otherwise, they're never getting a VA loan again. And so when in the process of doing this, when a veteran seller finds out that they're essentially becoming a de facto guarantor of the loan that they allow somebody else to assume, they're a little more leery about having somebody assume their loan. So I'm not trying to scare people away from doing it. It's not anything illegal, but we as the professionals need to, and bring value to our clients, we need to understand the consequences, right? And so, and let's go back to FHA for a minute, right? That's cleaner because you're not dealing with a veteran. It's not tied to the case number isn't tied to the veteran. It's tied to the property. But in a lot of scenarios, think about this. If the original borrower bought the house and they had a $250,000 mortgage, and over the years they paid it down $50,000, and they only have $200,000 outstanding, and the house is now worth $500,000 or $600,000. Let's just go with $600,000. That means the buyer, in most cases, is going to need to come in with $400,000 to pay off the equity that the original borrower had so that they can get that 2.5% money, which in practical purposes, in most situations, or at least a lot of situations, is kind of undoable, right? It's not worthwhile. And so I think our job as professionals is to bring sanity, perspective, reality to the equation. Be like, yeah, wouldn't it be great? And yes, there is value, but it's kind of got some pretty heavy constraints on the value that it brings Mr. Seller or Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. And hopefully we can use that to do a better job for our clients and not let them go down that path too far and then get frustrated. We should be more equipped to explain to them the potentialities up front so that they don't go down and have a certain expectation and not have it met and then them be frustrated with you. Make sense? I hope that helps you in your business, and I hope you have a great week.